President Biden announcing a ceasefire with Israel just hours after speaking on the phone with Egypt's leader. That's Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which prompted one Middle East analyst to comment. The comment, quote, says this: Biden has avoided speaking to Sisi since Biden took office today, meaning yesterday. He called him an hour later. Israel-Gaza ceasefire. Whoever was advising Biden to avoid Sisi, pro-Muslim Brotherhood elements close to admin, has a lot of egg on their face tonight. Again, that is a Middle East analyst. Here to react is Jason Greenblatt, former White House envoy to the Middle East. Now, Jason, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this matter. What do you make of the fact that Biden waited until what we're told was yesterday to call Sisi? What would be the reasoning behind that? And who takes credit for this ceasefire?
Thank you for having me. Well, President Biden should have called President al-Sisi long ago. Egypt is a strong and important ally of the United States. It shouldn't have taken this conflict for him to call President al-Sisi. The ceasefire itself, we should all recognize, while good, is only temporary. Hamas is a bloodthirsty terrorist organization, Iran-funded and controlled. And I'm glad that Israelis and Palestinians can now go back to normal living. But we shouldn't be celebrating, because Hamas's only reason for existence is the destruction of the state of Israel. So let's not pretend the problem isn't there. But credit should go to President al-Sisi. I'm sure Qatar was involved and other Middle Eastern nations. So I thank them for convincing Hamas, for the moment at least, to lay down their weapons. And I'm glad that Israel was able to do what it needed to do to degrade the capabilities of Hamas during these past 11 days. What they did was justifiable, right, and just.
There are several, avenues we can go down in that conversation as far as what could possibly potentially happen with the ceasefire, how long it would last, et cetera. But I want to focus with you on this part of it really quickly, if I can. The media is focusing on the credit of who gets the credit of this. When they write about it, they talk about Biden's quiet diplomacy within this. It has been very unclear of the messaging coming from the White House on which side, who's taking which side with Hamas or with Israel. It hasn't been clear. But if you're reading the reports and you followed this, you as well, I'm sure you have, you know that the mediation itself has been continuing in Egypt. This has been ongoing. They would go back and forth. But right after the ceasefire is announced, the president of the United States stepped up and said, oh, I applaud my team for taking action. Is that necessarily the case? Is that the messaging that was put out all along by this White House?
You raise a really important point and nuance. The messaging from the White House, in my view, was muddled. On the one hand, they said they strongly support Israel's right to defend itself from indiscriminate rocket attacks, as if they needed the word indiscriminate, to protect Israeli civilians. It should really be to protect any Israeli, military or civilian. But then they say things that suggest to me that they put pressure on Israel to stop the fighting. So I don't really know. And of course, the Biden administration engaging with the Palestinian Authority on this part of the conflict, this Hamas issue, is really useless, because the Palestinian Authority not only has no sway in Gaza, it has no way to enter Gaza, and the Palestinian Authority and Hamas hate each other terribly. They're very, very bitter rivals. So I don't know really what went on behind closed doors, but I don't know that U.S. diplomacy was so much involved in getting Hamas to lay down its weapons as opposed to the Middle Eastern countries. And I hope that this is not the case, that the Biden administration, I hope, did not pressure Israel to stop what it needed to do to degrade Hamas's capabilities somewhat. Of course, they have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, in your statement, you talked about what Biden said in regards to the humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. We actually have that clip. I'll play that for you. Here it is.
We will do this in full partnership with the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas, the Authority, in a manner that does not permit Hamas to simply restock its military arsenal.
Can you explain that? That may be confusing for some, and really how separate is the Palestinian Authority and Hamas?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, because, as I said, they definitely are bitter rivals, enemies, in fact. If President Biden figures out a way to get the Palestinian Authority into Gaza to do the reconstruction, that would be a change from something that we had studied and consulted with our allies and friends and others who are interested in helping Gaza. So if he could do it, that's great. No one was able to do that over the past decade or more. The second issue when it comes to the Palestinian Authority is that the Palestinian Authority uses its own funds that it gets from the U.S. and others to encourage and pay Palestinians to maim and murder Israelis. So how is the U.S. going to be sure that the Palestinian Authority does not use that money to allow them to encourage people to kill Israelis? I think they have two significant hurdles. The last hurdle, which the Biden administration should ask themselves is it a good use of U.S. taxpayer funds to contribute to Gaza when in 2 months or 6 months or 2 years, Hamas is simply going to attack Israel again? Israel will have to justifiably defend itself, and all the things that the U.S. taxpayer money went to build are inevitably going to be destroyed again because of Hamas's hate and desire to destroy Israel.
Before we go, I wanted to get your comment on this. The White House at the same time, signing a bill to combat anti-Asian hate. But in the past few days, we've seen an uptick in anti-Semitic attacks, including outside our own offices here at Newsmax, or literally right outside. And unfortunately, this isn't new. It just doesn't garner a lot of attention for some reason in the media. Does the White House need to say more about this anti-Semitic crimes or anti-Semitic violence we've seen? And here's the video. By the way, our studio is right above this area.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. It's a really important question that people have lost focus on. And I applaud the administration for doing this anti-Asian bill. However, they ought to very quickly gear up and do something similar to fight anti-Semitism. It's been growing and growing, and this conflict is allowing people of very, very, very bad people of ill will, people that have hate in their hearts, to do things like are being done on this video. And, I'll give the Biden administration 24 hours a week, whatever it needs for them to get their act together on this, but they ought to step up to the plate, and soon.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Jason Greenblatt joining us live here on a Friday. Jason, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.